Today I want to talk about the new year. So this is the year of the snake. But more precisely, it's actually the year of the wood snake. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on how that works. Now, there's a high school in San Francisco where my daughter and my son and their cousins went to. It's called the Galileo High School. And so you know about Galileo. Galileo is a very important scientist, one of the first in the Renaissance era, after the Dark Ages. And he did a great discovery through his own telescope. He was observing the movement of the sun, the moon, and Jupiter. And he tied that to the rise and falling of the tide, and he came up with this theory, or he proved the theory, that it was the Earth that is circle around the sun and not the other way. And that obviously is not good for the church, because according to the book of Genesis, God created the earth first, and it's only on the second day that he created the sun and the moon. So it couldn't be that the sun is not circling around the earth. The earth is the center of the universe. So for that, he was put in house arrest, and he actually died in his own home. Now, that's only a few hundred years ago. Now, the Chinese for thousands of years understood that. They understood that. They understood that it was this, the sun was the center of the universe, and all the other planets were circling around the sun. And with the naked eye, they could see Jupiter. And the first discovery, thousands of years ago, was that it takes 12 years for the Jupiter to circle around the sun. And so that's why they divide that cycle into 12 animals. Each one is 1 year, and it takes 12 years for Jupiter and the Earth to come back to its original configurations. So these animals are, you probably know that already, it's rat, oxen, tiger, rabbit, dragon, and then snake. This is the year of the snake. And then next year will be the horse. Horse is my son's year. Sheep is my daughter's year. And then monkey, that's my year. Rooster, dog, and pig. So those are the 12 animals, and they represent the 12 configurations. But then they decided that that's not enough granularity, right? You can't determine someone just by one of the 12. And so with the naked eye, in a good night, they actually observed 4 other planets, so a total of 5. And then they decided that since there are 5 planets, and it takes 12 years for Jupiter to circle around the sun, it would take 60 years to actually return to its original configurations. So back in the old days, on your 60th birthday, that's a big deal, because you're actually going back. So, for example, in my case, I'm a meadow monkey. And so a few years back, I had my 60th birthday, and I'm a meadow monkey again, right? So this year is the year of the snake, but it's the wood snake. Last year was the year of the dragon. It was also the wood dragon. It just goes around like this. That's how that works. But they go further. They actually identified the 5 planets with 5 elements, and they believe that it's the harmony between these 5 forces, right, that creates life. And so those 5 planets, they named them after water, that's Mercury, wood, that's Jupiter, fire, that would be Mars, Saturn, that's soil, and Venus is metal. Not that each one of them represent that element, it's just that 5 means 5 elements, and it's just the 5 elements, the both what we call the enabling and restraining forces between these 5 elements that create what is called the yin and the yang, and the harmony. So there are in fact 60 cycles to 60 celestial cycle, not 12. So how do these forces work? Well, very simply, think about it. Up to now, we only know of Earth as the only planet that supports life form. And we go out and we look for other planets as far as we can, and we haven't found any yet. And what we're looking for, the first indication of life, is water. Right? Now, it might turn out that there is life out there, they just don't need water, but that's the extent of our understanding, is that life needs water. Now, with water, it would you would have some vegetation. So that meaning that the water is the one that supports the wood. Once you have vegetation, it changes the atmosphere. At least that's how the planet Earth works. And then when you change its atmosphere, the sun would come in, and so the water will enable the fire. And once the sun comes in, it warms up the soil, so the fire enables the soil. And once you have soil, you support more vegetation, and the vegetation turns into mineral, so the soil supports the mineral. And once you have mineral is add back to the water, now it's life to water, right? Mineral. And so that's the kind of enabling cycle, one support the other. But if that's all you have, that's not enough, because you also need the restraining. And so in this case, imagine you have a pentagon with all six, and then there's also, in between, so it's a restraining. So for example, water restrains fire, right? That's obvious. Fire restrains metal. It will melt it. Metal restrains wood, right? You can actually cut through wood. And wood restrains soil. You can grow trees, you can put things around soil to prevent landslide. And the soil prevents water, restrains water, and so forth. And so those are the yin and yang, those are the enabling and restoring relationship. And it's because you have both enabling and restoring that you have harmony. And so the fact that we're having climate catastrophe in our home planet is simply that we have lost that harmony. In fact, we have so much chaos and things in our society. It's only again because we have lost that harmony as well, right? People talk a lot about middle class. I've been in this country since 1971. And middle class, in my case, was my uncle, who was the only person that was working in the family. And my aunt is a stay-home mom, and they have a bunch of kids. And my uncle was a World War II veteran, so he had a job working for the post office, and that was a good job. That's all he needed to support a family. And they had a house, 2 cars, and so forth. So that was middle class. Not only that, the kids, when they grow up, they get a job working for UPS and whatnot, a union job, and they had a good life. That was working class. We don't have that anymore. We have lost that harmony, and now we only have working poor. But anyway, enough of that. Now, the Chinese actually also believe that our internal organs are also fall into those 5 elements. And they separate the organs into what's called treasure organs. These are the organs that you were given by your mom as you were incubating inside the womb. Things like the heart, the lung, the kidney, and spleen. They think a lot about the spleen, and the liver. And they call that the treasure organ. They're solid organs that contain the treasure. Then the other ones, they call it the chamber organs. They're empty inside. The intestines, the bladder, and so forth. And the treasure organs, they also associate that with fire. With elements. So the kidney is the most important. The kidney energy. I'm talking about the kidney energy, not necessarily the kidney organ. And that's water. So water is the precursor of life. And so we do a lot of practice here to make good use of our water element, the kidney. And after that, the liver is the vegetation or the wood, right? That's where the red blood and that cultivate. And then the fire is the heart. The splint is the soil. The soil is actually the incubator of life. So one is the precursor, one is the incubator. Both of them are very important. And finally, the lung is the metal. Right? So they understand that. And not only do they associate the organs with the 5 elements, they associate the emotion with the 5 elements. So obviously, anger is fire. Right? Sadness is water. Fear is wood. Right? Fear is wood. Like, you can't move, right? You shine the light on the deer, they don't move. They're in total fear. And then the worry, too much liberation would be like metal. And so that kind of explains some of the things going on. Once upon a time, when I was a kid, people start to understand cancer, and it's such a scary disease that nobody even mentioned the word cancer. You can't even mention the word cancer. You say something like that, and people understood cancer. That's a death sentence, and obviously that's because they typically know about cancer in the late stage, and back then there weren't much control on the environment. So a lot of cancers come from the environment. But these days, not so much. Not so much. I mean, even if you don't consume organic food, even the regular food doesn't have that much toxin in it. But yet, cancer is not cured. If anything, there are more cancer now than there were when I was young. Even when we detect it earlier, you don't necessarily die from it, but it's still a very scary disease. So there are researchers think that maybe it has to do with our mental state. If you're angry all the time, anger is fire. So what sustains fire? Wood sustains fire. So you're always drawing energy from your wood element, which is the liver. And people who are angry all the time tend to suffer from liver cancer. There's an epidemic right now of young people, young Asian women suffering lung cancer who had never smoked before, doesn't consume chemical, and yet they're dying, or they're at least suffering from lung cancer. How does that work? And so there are researchers that says, because they're not happy people. When you look in, they're not happy, they're sad. That's a water element. So water element would deplete the metal element, would draw all the energy out of the metal element. The metal element is lung. And so people also understand that cancer means that you have cells that cannot, basically cancer cells are just cells that cannot sustain its own life anymore. So they turn from the regular cell to cancer cell. But anyway, enough of that. I want to talk about the year of the snake. Now it's less than a week after the new president. And I said this before many times, and if my message doesn't get out loud and clear, let me say it again. If you vote for Trump, you're in the wrong class. You don't belong here. I have no place for you. No place in my heart. Sorry. I am so sorry for you. But it's going to be a tough time, and it's only been a week. Now, in the Chinese tradition, snake is actually known as the little dragon. Dragon is not real. Dragon is a mythical version of a snake. The snake and dragons are not that different. And actually, in many non-Western culture, now in the Western culture, we tend to associate dragon with the Bible, right? So we think of dragon, we think of snake as in the Bible, so we think of snake as a devilish. But in the non-Western culture, snakes, I keep mixing the two. Snakes are actually divine because they're dragon, they're little dragons. So, for example, in India, in Hinduism, snakes are called naga. Naga are semi-divine beings that represents fertility, cosmic balance, and renewal. So it's actually a good animal. It's actually a good animal. You think about it, right? They're a spirit animal because they live in the ground, right? And they don't actually hibernate. But when you see them in the spring, that's the beginning of life. They don't hibernate. So reptiles do not hibernate. Hibernation means that, like bear, they go into deep sleep. They are isolated. They live in isolation from the world. Snakes don't isolate themselves like that. Snakes enter into a dormant state. They don't sleep. They don't go into deep sleep, but they enter in the dormant state. And the technical term of that is called brumation, where they just slow down all their body functions to conserve the energy, but they remain totally alert to any danger. So it's very appropriate that the first year of the new administration is the year of the snake. Why? Well, because it reminds me of a fight between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman back in 1974. Now, George Foreman was younger and stronger, and Muhammad won that fight by just letting Foreman do his thing. Just let him do his thing, and just let him tire himself in the first few rounds. There's no point of fighting him. He is so much stronger. Just let him tire him out. Wait for the opportunity. Back to the snake. The snake don't attack. They don't attack. They're not exactly like predators. They don't go out and attack. But instead, they attack only in self-defense. If you attack them, you step on them, right? Then you know they react fiercely. Snakes also have something else that they do that is unusual. They shed their skins as a sign of renewal, as a sign of growth. So think about that. Think about all of that. What do we have to do in the next week, in the next month, and perhaps in the next year? Let the other guy fight it out on his own. Let him tire himself. Let him go silly. No point of fighting him now. Conserve our energy. Stay totally alert, but fight back quickly and fiercely when the opportunity presents itself. We conserve our energy. We go into a semi-dormant state. We maintain our spiritual integrity. Use the opportunity to get to know our true self, as if we're shedding our past, as if we're starting our renewal. That's what we need to do.